Hello everybody. This new video. First, I'd like to thank Anthony Smith again for this nice shirt. OG Bulldogs, or OG Bulldog. Nice shirt, good quality shirts. Like I said, he's got some merch. Get a hold of him. I got all my merch available too. Contact me for books, Sporting Dog Journal reprints, sticks, t-shirts, new cap. Keep scratching. That's a phrase I use a lot. So I turned it into a cap. Uh, Always on Facebook Messenger or my email, richardjschoolboy60@gmail.com, or on Instagram. Responses has been good for my new book. People seem to like it. It's got a lot of information, and I'll just keep writing more books and doing more vids. This video, it's kind of a conglomeration of several topics that have come up lately and things from my past. It's along the lines of schooling, but and someone asked me, talk about raising pups. So this one's going to be called Schooling Pups, and there's some things in here that there's some things here that I did, part of growing up, the way I grew up with cow dogs and German shepherds and mutts, and they always had a purpose. Whatever animal we had, whether it was a dog, horse, cows, pigs, whatever, working, sporting, food, things like that, hunting. I wasn't really a hunter, even though we hunted. It wasn't in the traditional sense, like for deer and stuff like that. If I shot a deer, it's because I shot a deer, not that I went deer hunting. And that's any other critter. Had a reason for doing it. That's one thing my dad instilled in us. Don't kill something unless you have a reason to do it, And it's, Norman Houghton did a lot of this stuff. Irish Kid, even Bakary. We've talked about schooling dogs, For me, it started when they were pups. And when we say schooling, we're talking, in the traditional sense, you're talking about rolling dogs. And first, I'd like to give the disclaimer again. Nothing here intended for illegal purposes. It's all history, information. If you're interested in listening, I appreciate it. If not, that's okay. And this is all in the past. I'm talking years and years ago. But it's something that Bach and I have talked about on different chats with different questions. And there's very few people that I knew that where we did some of the same things, as far as how we raise pups. And, everybody has their way of doing it. I always had a reason for doing what I did with the pups. People say, let pups be pups, and they'll grow up to whatever they grow up to be. That's true. But you can influence them. You can teach them. You can bring out the instincts in them or improve on the instincts. And Bach and I had a lot of similar ways of doing things for the same reasons, and without having a lot of contact throughout the years. It's just, I came to a point where, my whole reason for doing all this stuff in the back was for competition. So within that, comes, how are you going to raise these pups for that? And, if you have a bunch of dogs, it's hard to do every little thing you want to do with them. It's hard to spend the time with them that's necessary. It's hard to teach them and influence them and school them and raise them all the same way. People have their routines. They have their ways of doing it. And, by the time they get of age, a lot of times they're lacking in a lot of areas. Not because of the ignorance or the person not having the knowledge. It's more so a time factor. So generally what a lot of people will do, and myself included, even though I didn't have a lot of dogs, is you have your favorites. So you're going to put more into them than you would another dog that's not your favorite. Is that prejudice? Is it unfair? You could say that, but that's the way it is. We like what we like. But even within that, I put as much time into every dog that I could, treated them all the same with the expectation that they would make the grade. Some of them don't, some of them do. You take the losses as a learning experience and continue with the ones that do pan out. So from when they're pups, I fed them quality food, and we fed them quality scraps and gave them bones and with supplements from a young age, because I talk about constitution and I talk about health all the time, and that was very important. Because they're athletes, they need to be tough. Now, along with the food and supplements and deworming and keep them free from parasites and having a clean area and proper housing, there's a lot of mental conditioning that goes into raising pups and having dogs and conditioning and all that. So if I'm going to gear these pups to be athletes, along with the health and the feed comes the attitude. So I'm going to introduce them to different people, different areas, different animals. And because I had that background of country living, when they were pups and growing up, they're going to run into rabbits and squirrels and chickens and gophers and coyotes and livestock sometimes. Sometimes those things happen by accident, especially with livestock. You don't want your dog attacking your livestock, but it does happen. And sometimes they're going to happen on purpose, meaning I'm going to introduce them to animals to hunt, whether it's a possum or any of the ones I just mentioned. And the reason for doing that is not only that prey drive and hunting instinct was important to me, but I needed to see certain things out of the dogs to judge their quality or judge where they are in life. At what age are these instincts coming out? Do they have the instinct for hunting? Do they have the instinct to run something down, kill it, and eat it? And with my dogs, if they pulled the gopher out of the ground, or they ran down a squirrel, or they dug up a rabbit or a squirrel or a snake or whatever it was, if they got it and started eating it, whether they swallowed it whole or chewed it up, I allowed them to do that. Some people were afraid, well, they might get rabies, or they might have some disease, or they're going to get worms and all that. Yeah, I guess. But dogs have been eating wild animals for eons, and I'd never thought that it was different for domestic dogs to do the same thing. In fact, my dad's favorite cow dog was a dog named Sonny. And when he wasn't doing his work, he was with his females, he was hunting. But his way of hunting, and he learned this on his own, wasn't to go out and hunt animals. It was to send his females out to hunt rabbits and squirrels, and they would run him by him, and all he would do is wait for him to run by and run out and grab them and snatch them. He let them do all the work, and he got the benefits from it. That was just his dominant male persona and his intelligence, and it was a sight to see, because he would post up, send them out, they would run them down, do all the work, and he'd get the benefits. Now, he shared his food, of course. They were his females. He was good with his offspring. He wasn't dominant that way, where he killed his offspring or stuff like that. But just an intelligent dog. And in the wild, like with packs of or prides of lions, the females do most of the hunting, unless it's a loner or a male that's been kicked out of his group. The females do most of the hunting. Where the male comes in, he's for protection, and you'll see that where you have one or two females lionesses being harassed by hyenas, and sometimes a younger male or an old sick male being harassed by hyenas. They're mortal enemies, right? Now they do what they do, and sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, sometimes they succumb to the 40 hyenas or whatever it is. But the head of the lions, when he hears all this stuff, you'll see him run in and destroy a hyena, kill it. Now all the hyenas are afraid of him. Whereas they may have jumped and ganged up on a couple of females, when that big 500-pound male comes in, exerts his dominance, exerts his killing instinct, they scatter. He's not fighting the hyena, he's killing it. Females and younger males and like that, they'll fight him. That's not what the male is doing. So in that respect, that's what I wanted my dogs to do when they were quote unquote hunting. Or if they happen to have a chicken run by, or sometimes unfortunately a cat, or squirrel, or a bird sitting on a tree, a limb that's low, and the dog jump up and get it. Some dogs will get them and kill them. Some dogs will get them and rip them up. The ones I like were the ones that would get them and eat them. Either swallow them whole or tear them apart, eat everything. Feathers, heads, feet, everything. Those are the ones I keyed on the most, especially when they're young, because you see that. Just like when they have their little tussle litter mates and this and that. Some will fight, they're going through the motions, and they're learning, expressing what they learned from their mother, maybe when she teaches them certain things, how the mother plays with them, teaches them to hit here and hit the chest, and go to the leg and shake and all like that. They're going through the motions. It's a learning process. The pups I like are the ones that had intent, that went for the kill shots, that went for the throat or the chest or the stifle, that old instinct of hitting the back end, going to the belly and going foul. Not so much the leg and stifle, that's good too, but the ones that went in where the guts are. And you can introduce them in actual schooling to do that. I would do that too during the schooling process, I would place the dogs in certain areas. Or if one dog was bigger than the other and is getting the advantage, I'd trip the bigger dog, let the smaller dog get on them real quick. Or I'd grab their back legs and flip them down. Hold them down if I had to. Grab that smaller dog, put it in its throat. If it stays working the throat, again, I'm speaking of the past, just so you have an understanding of the mindset of the animal and why and how I'm doing the things I'm doing. If you place them on an area and they grab it and let go and go somewhere else, that just tells you they haven't gotten their head why you want them there in the first place. Some you place there, like you place them in the throat, or you place them in the brisket. They'll stay there and work it. They understand that's where the animal lives. They're trying to take that out. Some don't get it right away, so you have to repeat it over and over, 3, 4, 5 times. Place in that area, place in that area. Hold the dog down. I've sat on top of the dog, the bigger dog, because they want to get up. They're fighting me. They're fighting to get up, rolling around, this and that. I've had to pin them down and let the other dog work them. Now, you might think that's unfair. It's not unfair. It's schooling. It's teaching them. So if the other one takes advantage of having that advantage, the smaller dog, or even if it's not the smaller dog, I would do that with dogs the same size, whatever. But I'm just using the smaller, bigger dog as an example. They take advantage of that situation, that's good. But what is the bottom dog going to do about it? Some will panic, some will get frustrated, some will get pissed and get mad. They'll learn to fight off the bottom. They'll go into the throat, they'll grab that bottom jaw. They'll grab a leg, they'll try and spin around and grab, on their side or on their back to grab a stifle or leg. Some just grab a pinch of skin because that's all they can do. That's all that's available. As long as they're grabbing that pinch of skin and working it, trying to get a better hold or shaking it, I'm good with that. So throughout their life, I would do certain things with dogs like that. Try and bring out their hunting instincts, their killer instincts, right? And I like dogs that got pissed, that got mad. And some were vocal about it, some were serious about it. But whatever it is, you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their body language. You can see it when they stiffen up, or that intent. That's basically what I wanted to see all the time. Where is their intent? Are they going through the motions of the action, just doing whatever they're doing, or do they have the intent to finish their opponent? Are they hitting the spots to do that? Because if they don't hit the spots to do that during this little bit of schooling, then can I teach them to have that mindset? And that's what I did with when you place them in certain spots on the dog, or when you let one have the advantage over the other one. What are they going to do with it? They grab an ear and they shake it or drag the dog around, that's okay, but that's not the intent to finish. So all this is being done, and even when they're pups, people ask me, well, what'd you feed them? I use the supplements, like I said, the dog bloom and the B15 desiccated liver and all like that, and I use kibble, but I also, especially with the younger pups, up to maybe at least past 6 years old, we'd always give them goat's milk or some kind of cottage cheese, because that constitution, that body structure, the bone and the muscle and all that, it's important in being an athlete, but it's important as far as taking punishment, having thick skin, good teeth, so that they can withstand whatever it is they're going to go through. And it's not just the fighting part of it. Back in the day, it was their immune system, withstand disease and hell. They're going to get sick. Well, how sick did they get? Did it affect them that much? Is it like some people, you have 2 or 3 days where you have a cold, and you're okay? Does the flu really knock you down, or does it turn into pneumonia? Or is it you just have flu for a few days or a week and you do whatever you got to do and you're okay? I wanted my dogs to have a good immune system as well. So the only way I knew how to do that was to introduce them, let them kill animals, let them hunt, whatever. Let them eat some old nasty meat. And as far as food goes, you have kids, they feed them all kinds of stuff. I really didn't get angry at my kids for doing that. No, it's a pit bull, he shouldn't eat that. Nah, my dogs would eat lettuce. Or give them salsa and chips, or throw a piece of cheese, or they didn't want some part of their food. They're outside, I don't care what it was. The kid don't like it, he throws it down. 2 or 3 days later, rotted and whatever. If I'm walking a dog and he happened to grab it, and eat it, I didn't care. Maybe it's nasty. Did it make him sick? Not that I recall. All of this matters because when the dog's grown, you not only want a well-rounded athlete, you want a well-rounded dog where he's not spooked by a lot of things. You know, one of the things I used to tell people, if I sent them a dog, sold them a grown dog, or sent them a dog that they wanted to borrow, especially once I got out of the dogs, you know, I had several grown dogs. And I tell the people, take them, roll them right away. You don't have to acclimate them, get used to food, this or that. These are athletes that's what they're bred for. That's what they've done their whole life. There's no reason to be easy on them. Find out what they're about. Did the travel in the plane ride bother them? Or did the travel when you come and picked them up and drove back home, however many hours it was, did that bother them? Or were they okay? Did they adjust? Did they ignore it? And it's just another ride in a car. And the plane is just another ride in a bigger car. You know, so I would have people do that. I would tell them to do that. Some did it, some didn't. Some did, you know. They would tell me, hey, I did what you said, and the dog did what you said, you know. Because of that, they have to be mentally sound first and foremost to be able to condition them, to put them through those motions, you know. I had one little female K, and this story was told to me years later. I didn't know about it till later from Mike. And she was in the low 30s. I forget. She's one of the ones, her and Bambi were sisters. You know, I rolled them together. And I had schooled her, bred her, checked her. I had to get rid of my dogs later. So Joey bought her. Mike told me this story how she was at the house. And there was another male there. And Kay was a chain fighter, so when I sent her, she had already had broken teeth. But there was another male. It's a brother to a champion, or anyways. And I'm guessing because she was so small, the male was bigger than her, and he was a grown dog. And he got off the chain, got to her. By the time Joey got there, Kay had killed that male and was beating him up against the fence, you know. And that's just the way that I raised my dogs, you know. Meaning that you know, size didn't matter to them. They didn't care. They always thought they were winning, you know. They it didn't surprise me other than the weight difference. Man, that male is bigger and he's off the chain, and she got him and she killed him, and she was still killing him after he was dead. And I did that in schooling too. You know, it didn't matter if I scratched them to a rag, or I scratched them to a dead animal or whatever, you know, they were going to scratch. And some of them, you know, there's a few that are cannibals, but it's not so much being a cannibal. It's just the fact that you're, to them, it's food. It's not like a sadistic thought, you know, where they're like a serial killer or mass murder. It's just food, just another type of food. So they're going to eat it if it's presented to them, you know. And let's say, you know, one of the things I used to do too, and this is just to see where their mind is, and it comes from animals in the wild, you know. They become sharper the hungrier they get. And usually when they're hungriest, that's when they're going to make the kill. If it goes past that and they don't make the kill, there's a chance that they're going to starve. So there's a line there between the two. Most of the time, you know, you're going to, you know, I was going to roll my dogs at least 12 hours after they had eaten. Most of the time, 24 hours, just like a show, you know. But what happens if you wait 48 hours? Now they're really hungry. What are they going to do? I did that with several of my dogs. They didn't show signs of weakness. I would say they showed signs of hunger with their intensity and their intent. But not eating for 2 days didn't make them so weak where they couldn't stand up. They acted the same. They were just more intense because they were hungry. So I use that to their advantage in a role. Now, I wouldn't condition my dogs that way. I wouldn't make it a habit, but it was just seeing where the dog's mind was in doing that, going without food for a couple of days. They're used to doing it after a day, but what about 2 days? And you can see a little marked increase in their intensity, in their focus, in their intent to finish something, you know. So there's all these little things. When people talk about schooling, they're talking about you put two dogs together and you watch what's happening. There's a lot more to it than that. And it's not just, well, I put my dog on this style and I put my dog on this style so he can become familiar with it and he knows what to do about it and guard against it and nothing messes him up. Well, that's true. But dogs, especially pit bulls anyways, the ones that were used for what we used to use them for, they have that in them instinctively. It's just that the schooling brings it out, and the schooling allows them to exhibit it. But if you enhance those things, not just by the schooling, if you enhance their instincts for finish and prey drive and strength, it's like when the kids would take the pups out. You know, during the summertime when they're out of school, or on the weekends in fall and winter, you know, when my kids would go, especially my son, when he's gone with the dog, they're gone. They're doing whatever all day long. And he always had his knife on him, you know, from a young age. And he's got his dog on a lead, sometimes a longer lead, 25 foot, so they could have some freedom of movement. But he's gone with his dog. Whatever he killed, and I've mentioned one incident where they ran at night. It was at night, and they ran into some coyotes. My son's stabbing them, Bill's killing them, whatever, you know. He couldn't even hardly see. It was so dark. But the dog was there. The dog knew what to do, and he's there with his dog, and that's his dog, and they're going to fight these coyotes. So that's what they did. He came back all messed, you know, he's all dirty. He had blood on him from animals and all that. And, you know, I always told him, but don't let go of that lead, because if the dog takes off, they're gone. So he had that long lead on him, and he's fighting with one hand and holding Bill with the other, and Bill's doing his thing. That circumstance didn't happen all the time, but it did happen where they're all day long, running around all day long, and kicking back maybe for a little bit, and go looking for squirrels, and go looking for rabbits, jumping after them up trees, and scratching the trees. Really just that building their body, building their bone structure, you know. And they would do that with the puppies too. They'd go out in the field across the street and just run out there all day with the little tiny puppies. And the pups would get tired and they fall down, and one, you know, they fall asleep and they wake up and they go to the bathroom and the kids are playing, and, you know, they may just be playing in the dirt with all the pups around them. They're exercising for several hours, not continuously, but these are, you know, 2, 3, 4-month-old pups. Just doing that as a matter of course. That was their life. That all has to do with the constitution and building themselves up and building their immunity up. You know, pups are out there, they're going to eat all kinds of stuff, grass and dirt and mud and worms and bugs. You know, they'll chase bugs in the high grass and chew them and eat them. And you know, gophers, dig after gophers. They might catch a small snake or a lizard if they're lucky, you know, and they start getting up in age, and just do this throughout their life. That's why I say my family was important to me as far as the dogs go, because they did a lot of the work that I couldn't, because I wasn't there. I worked or whatever, or I'm working a dog, you know, and they took care of all that, you know. So that physical upbringing, including working on their senses and their instincts, plus all the physical stuff they did, to me, that's part of the schooling, and it starts when they're pups and continues throughout their life. And some you're going to do more than others, but all of them should be introduced to those ways of life, including taking them where they're tiny in a vehicle, running them around, you know. Of course, they're going to get car sick. Most of them get over it. But if you have one that doesn't get over it, he gets car sick every time, no matter what you do, that's not the dog you travel with. That's the dog you do at home, and I mean at home, his home, where he may be, you may be showing him 100 feet from where he lives. That's part of it too. You have to know which dogs you can travel with, or better to travel with, and which ain't. You know, and it doesn't matter if it's a half hour away or 10 hours away. Some dogs you just can't. That's just the way they are. So all this that I mentioned, there's a lot more to it. This is just off the top of my head, but it's all part of the schooling process, and not just looking at them and gauge, or wait until they're a year old or 2 years old or a year and a half or what it is, and begin the schooling. You know, and I would actually, you know, put young dogs together. You know, or a young dog with an older dog. And a lot of the schooling I did was amongst my own dogs. And it wasn't uncommon to go some distance time wise in a row, whether it was their first real roll or their second or whatever. Because they had all that exercise and taxing their body and learning how to kill animals and hunting beforehand, or just catching something in their chain space, or jumping up at a bird and grabbing it out of the air. So they had all this beforehand. And I mentioned this before. I never started a dog that didn't have something in his mouth before I actually started them in rolls. And that's why my dogs didn't hesitate in a roll. When I faced them up, they were used to being faced up. When I cut them loose, they're used to scratching at whatever's in front of them and going to work. So all this is part of the schooling. And like I said, there's a lot more to it. When it comes to me, I'll cover something else. But let me know what you think. And again, I appreciate all the comments, responses, all the purchases, all that. We'll just keep it rolling. Thank you.